Discover the inspiring truth behind a waitress's incredible bond with an old man until 4 bodyguards threatened to tear it apart. Sarah felt like an invisible specter, weaving through the bustling diner, her black apron heavy with used napkins and a crumpled order pad. Every day blended into the other, the endless clatter of plates, the hum of exchanged stories, the warm scent of bacon, a stark contrast to her icy reality at home, where her ailing mother lay curled beneath a patchwork quilt, fading away with each passing day. In this tiny Midwestern eatery, Sarah served coffee and omelets with an upbeat smile, but inside, an aching emptiness echoed. She craved a life beyond these 4 walls, a spark of purpose she once dreamed of igniting. Then came Mr. Jenkins, his bright smile breaking through her shadows. He sat at the counter with thick glasses perched on his nose, sharing tales of his days as a beloved schoolteacher. Each story captivated her, tugging at her memories of late-night study sessions and dusty library corners. She could almost feel the weight of textbooks again, the thrill of learning bubbling up in her chest, but worry clawed at her heart. Could she really leave this life, a life stitched together by obligation, if it meant pursuing long-forgotten dreams? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Their laughter resonated between plates and mugs, igniting something in Sarah, a warmth that chased off the chill of her daily grind. Her glances at Mr. Jenkins soon turned into abundant conversations, filled with dreams, trials, and hopes. But just as she tasted these sweet moments, a cloud loomed over their growing bond. He confided in her about the 4 intimidating bodyguards who shadowed him like a storm, hired by a greedy businessman intent on seizing his family's legacy. Each word dripped with fear and frustration, stirring something sharp within Sarah. The diner became a delicate balance on a tightrope for Sarah. If she focused on Mr. Jenkins, what would become of her responsibilities at home? Her heart raced with each visit, torn between the quiet terror of losing someone she cherished and the embers of her own aspirations flickering to life. She could envision a future where she wasn't just a waitress. But with every follow-up threat on Mr. Jenkins, her resolve weakened. Would she risk everything, her dreams, for the shackles of loyalty? As their friendship deepened, so did the shadows. The weight of it strangled Sarah, leaving her panicked and restless. He had become her guiding light, yet a growing darkness whispered of danger. More than once she hesitated at the impression of them together fighting against a faceless corporation felt impossible, like David taking on Goliath, only this wasn't a fairy tale. And then, in a moment that pinched her heart tight, a chilling phone call shattered the fragile calm. Mr. Jenkins was now in grave danger. Sarah stood motionless in the diner, the flickering neon light casting ghostly shadows against her trembling frame. Between the ailing mother at home and the looming threats from Mr. Jenkins, her quest for identity felt suspended in an unforgiving limbo. In this struggle for choice, would she abandon her dreams or confront the impending storm? The clatter of dishes faded into an abstract hum as Sarah's mind spun, caught in a whirlwind of urgency and fear. Mr. Jenkins needed her, yet she felt anchored by the weight of her responsibilities. The caution and care she had practiced at home seemed foolish in the face of the unknown threats swarming around him. How could she stand idly by while the man who had rekindled her spark was in peril? Days turned into a blur of anxiety and resolve. Every time the diner doorbell jingled, her heart skipped, her hope coiling into a tight knot when no familiar figure graced the barstool. Yet, on the 5th day, he arrived, looking frilier but steadfast. His smile faltered for a moment as he scanned the room, eyes landing on Sarah's worried expression. "Sarah, I'm glad to see you," he said, his voice steady but laced with an unsaid sorrow. "Mr. Jenkins, we have to talk." "This isn't just about you anymore, it's about me too," she responded, the words tumbling out before she could second-guess herself. He nodded, gesturing towards a quiet booth at the far end of the diner. When they settled in, the outside world faded to a distant echo. "I'm worried about those men. They don't just intimidate, they prepare to act," he confessed, the weight of his vulnerability heavy in the air. "I can't lose you. You've given me so much inspiration, and I—" Her voice dwindled into silence, the realization that her fears had to be confronted crashing down like waves against a cliff. "What is it, Sarah?" He pressed gently, his eyes searching hers. "I want to help you," she declared, a surprising fire igniting within her. "You've shared your dreams with me. I want to fight for yours and my own." But as she spoke, a flicker of doubt surfaced. Could she really step into a world filled with merciless adversaries? She had only ever known the comfort of unruffled days and the steady rhythm of carrying trays. Yet, she felt a budding tenacity fueled by every heartfelt exchange with Mr. Jenkins. "What do we do?" he asked, genuinely intrigued. "We need a plan," she declared, the confidence surprising even her. "And we need to use your knowledge. There must be loopholes, weaknesses in the businessman's strategy. Maybe we can make this public." Mr. Jenkins's eyes sparkled with a mix of hope and uncertainty. "You think it'll work?" "It has to. We can't let fear silence us," she replied, each word solidifying her resolve. The next days were a jumble of research and strategizing. Together, they pored over archives and newspapers, revealing the hidden history behind the businessman's encroachment on Mr. Jenkins's legacy. At times, doubt whispered in her ear, but it faded in the wake of a growing sense of purpose. Sarah discovered more about herself than she ever imagined. The confidence she never had began to unfurl. The woman who once felt invisible was now the one who could chart a course for change. Not just for Mr. Jenkins but for her own aspirations too, an awakening that shook her to life. After what felt like an eternity, Sarah and Mr. Jenkins had compiled information that could shift the balance in their favor. They formulated a plan to go public, one filled with risks but brimming with newfound courage. Just as they readied to venture into a world beyond their cozy diner, Mr. Jenkins received another ominous message. "Sarah, we can't wait any longer. They know we're onto them," he said gravely. Fear coursed through her veins, but instead of retreating, a fierce determination surged. "This isn't over. It's just beginning," she proclaimed, feeling the urgency like electricity in the air. With the shadows deepening again, Sarah faced a new decision: would she expose herself to the dangers lurking in the corners, or would she fight for everything she held dear? The moment stretched as they prepared to take action, stepping into the unknown, united against the storm. Would she be ready to embrace her new identity, forged in the fiery furnace of solidarity and courage? The diner's neon lights glowed brightly against the encroaching dusk, a stark contrast to the turmoil bubbling inside Sarah. Her heart raced as the implications of Mr. Jenkins's words settled heavily in her chest. They were about to step out into a world where transparency was a vulnerability, and that vulnerability could cost them dearly. "Let us do this," she said, her voice quivering slightly but undeniably firm. With that, they leaned into their plan, pausing only to gather the remnants of their courage. Sarah's mind swirled with questions. Who would believe them? What if those men were waiting, ready to retaliate? Yet, a bitter resolve shadowed her fears. She was no longer a passive observer, she had chosen to be a participant in her own life. Each morning, she studied the notes they had compiled, rehearsing each argument, each piece of evidence. Her mind turned to the blockers that stood in their way. The businessman's web of influence was vast and intricately woven, but she felt a quiet urgency calling her to unravel it. Every detail she uncovered sparked new ideas about her own potential, their combined prowess becoming an unspoken pact. They decided to approach a journalist known for covering interesting local stories, someone who wasn't afraid to confront powerful adversaries. As they sat in a nearby cafe, Sarah clutched her coffee cup as she watched Mr. Jenkins present their case with a world-weary appeal, while she injected her youthful optimism. The reporter was initially skeptical but intrigued enough to ask probing questions. "What's your angle here?" he asked, leaning forward. Sarah exchanged a glance with Mr. Jenkins. This wasn't just about exposing corruption. In many ways, it was their legacy against the tide of greed. "It's about defiant hope," she replied, the words flowing with a newfound confidence that she barely recognized as her own. The journalist nodded, scribbling down notes. As the conversation deepened, Sarah felt her fear morph into fierce loyalty. Each question he posed helped her clarify her thoughts and reinforced her determination to be seen as more than just a waitress with dreams. She was a voice, one that refused to be silenced. Days morphed into nights filled with research and anticipation. Together, they meticulously planned their strategy, approaching various outlets while crafting a narrative that would resonate with the community. They simulated hurdles, rehearsing potential responses to pushback, and Sarah felt herself transforming under the pressure. But with every stride forward, the shadows closed in. One evening, as they emerged from a meeting, Sarah noticed a black sedan lingering a bit too long. A chill ran down her spine. "Mr. Jenkins, we need to be careful," she whispered. "They're watching us." His eyes darkened with a mix of worry and pride. "You've become intensely aware, Sarah. That's good." Yet she could see it weighing on him, the possibility of threat overshadowing their hope. Was she strong enough? The question nagged at her as she felt a burgeoning responsibility not just for Mr. Jenkins but for her own contributions toward justice. Determined to push through the fear, she reached for her phone, drafting an email to the journalist, urging him to expedite the story. It was time to expose the truth, even if it meant facing adversaries head-on. The tension built as she pressed send, heart thudding in her chest, aware that every choice now carried weight. They weren't just navigating their own personal identities, they were sharpening their resolve for an impending confrontation. As their plan unfolded with unexpected complications looming, Sarah embraced the dual roles of fighter and foundation of support. And then an unexpected message from the journalist rattled her resolve. "Are you sure about this? They know you're talking." The reality of their situation bore down heavily, demanding immediate action. As fear trickled in once again, she felt a flicker of rebellion igniting within. This wasn't merely a battle for Mr. Jenkins' legacy, it was a defining moment for her to confront what she had hidden from herself all along. Holding her breath, Sarah realized with dawning clarity that every step they took now led directly into the heart of danger. Would they stand firm, or would they retreat in the face of very real threats? The confrontation was inevitable, the repercussions unknown. Her pulse raced as she faced Mr. Jenkins, their eyes locking in a silent understanding. This was the precipice everything they had worked for hung in the balance. The moment of decision arrived. The air grew thick with uncertainty as Sarah stared at her phone, the screen glaring back like a judgmental eye. "They know you're talking" resonated in her mind, twisting her stomach into knots. She could feel the weight of the screens around her, the eyes behind them like shadows, always lurking, always watching. Mr. Jenkins, meanwhile, lingered indefinitely on the threshold of hope and despair, and Sarah knew the stakes were rising as high as the tensions between them. "We can't back down," she said finally, her voice steadier than she felt. "We need to move forward, even if it means risking everything." Her heart raced with conviction, never before had her passion burned so fiercely. Mr. Jenkins regarded her thoughtfully. "You've changed, Sarah. You've grown into someone who believes she is capable, powerful even." There was something profound about his words, igniting a flicker of self-belief in her she wasn't sure existed before their alliance. But alongside that newfound intensity, fear clung tightly, the fine line between bravery and recklessness felt razor-thin now. "We must prepare for the next steps," he urged, gulfing his hands together as if gathering strength. "Let us not give them the satisfaction of seeing us falter. This is more than just a story, it's a battle for truth." And in this, Sarah felt his steadfastness wrap around her like a warm blanket and anchor in the pouring rain. They retreated to Mr. Jenkins' cramped apartment, where a whiteboard stood covered in hastily scribbled notes and diagrams. It had become a war room of sorts. As they brainstormed angles for their story, Sarah felt a strange thrill. The accolades of victory had yet to come, but the prospect of making a real difference fueled her ambitions. What if we structured it like a timeline? She proposed, tapping her pen against the surface. We can build a narrative that shows the evolution of events leading to the corruption. Mr. Jenkins nodded appreciatively, the lines on his face softening for a moment. That asset context gives weight to the facts. But we need to rope in more allies, people who want change. Her mind went instantly to the colleagues at the diner, people who'd become like family. Similar stories trailed through their lives, each one an untold testament to resilience and hope. I can reach out, she said, determination laced in her voice. They deserve to know. We all deserve to know. As the walls of the apartment blurred with the scribblings of their shared endeavor, the realization of her own agency began to dawn on Sarah. She wasn't just playing a supportive role, she was active on this battlefield, shaping her own narrative. And the more she embraced that idea, the clearer her purpose became. Facing the unknown had never been easy, but now it felt invigorating. She thought of the black sedan lurking outside that had sparked her fear. She could use that anxiety as fuel. The looming threats cast dark shadows, but she recognized their power, they only served to intensify her resolve. After I reach out to the team at the diner, we need to review our strategies, she felt compelled to advise Mr. Jenkins. No more delays. Let us put them on notice. Suddenly, the moment felt charged, electric with a mix of anxiety and anticipation. However, just as they moved to grab their coats, a loud knock reverberated through the room, jarring her thoughts. The brittle tension snapped like a dry twig underfoot. Who could that be? Sarah's pulse quickened, and Mr. Jenkins' expression morphed from focus to alertness. They exchanged glances, a mutual recognition of the dread settling into the air. Stay back, he whispered, even as he stepped toward the door. She watched him grasp the knob, adrenaline pumping through her veins. Was this the moment where everything would unravel? In that split second, Sarah realized something crucial. She could no longer simply react to the world unfolding around her. It was time to confront her fears directly and embrace the uncertain outcome that awaited them. She too took a step forward. Whatever lay beyond that door, they would face it together. In that moment of waiting, she could feel her identity shifting, as if she were shedding layers of who she used to be in favor of emerging as someone steadfastly resolved to fight. But as Mr. Jenkins pulled the door open, she couldn't shake the rising dread stirring within her. It was about to become painfully clear whose allegiance could change everything, and only one question remained: would they take that step back into a world of shadows or step into a new light of truth? The door creaked open slowly, and the dim light from the hallway flooded into the apartment. Sarah's heart raced, she was tense, poised like a coiled spring. As Mr. Jenkins peered out, she strained to hear any hint of who or what waited on the other side. Mr. Jenkins? A voice broke through the stillness, low and measured. It was familiar, yet it sent chills down her spine. Sarah shifted her weight, her mind churning with possibilities. This was not just a visitor, it was a reckoning. Tom, Mr. Jenkins said, his tone betraying a mixture of relief and tension. What are you doing here? The figure in the doorway stepped forward, revealing Tom, one of the diner's regulars. His eyes glinted like polished stones, shadows masking the concern beneath his demeanor. I heard some things. Thought it was time to check in. Briefly, Sarah felt a flicker of reassurance. Someone from the diner knew about their plight. But the uncertainty of Tom's presence turned her stomach. What could he possibly know about the depths they were navigating? Things are escalating, Mr. Jenkins continued. You shouldn't be here. Maybe not, but I didn't come just for pleasantries. Tom's voice grew firmer as he held up his phone, its screen a portal to another world of information they had been combing through. "I've got to lead someone who could support our cause and provide evidence. But the clock is ticking." Sarah felt a pang of hope but couldn't ignore the warning bells ringing in her mind. "How do you know this is safe?" she questioned, stepping cautiously into the conversation, her newfound assertiveness crashing against the reality of their situation. "What if this puts you in danger?" Tom's expression hardened, deep lines forming like cracks in a stone. "If we don't act now, we may lose everything. You both know what's on the line." "What else do you know?" Mr. Jenkins asked, tension threading through his words. With each passing second, the air thickened, their lives hanging in that fragile balance between fear and hope. "There's a meeting tonight, a small gathering of key players," Tom explained, his gaze shifting from Jenkins to Sarah. "If we can infiltrate and capture what's really going on, we can expose the corruption. We need to tread carefully, but it's an opportunity." Despite the adrenaline surging through her veins, Sarah could feel the weight of doubt settling back in. The prospect of infiltrating a gathering made her stomach twist further. "But what if it goes wrong? What if they recognize you?" Tom leaned closer, earnestness glimmering in his eyes. "Then we get what's needed, and we run. The truth is bigger than ourselves. Don't you want to expose the lies?" His words struck a chord within her, resonating with that same fire she had felt moments ago. This was more than just about uncovering misinformation, it was about forging new pathways for herself, proving her worth not just to others but to herself. "I want to know the truth," she murmured, the conviction sparking like a flame within. In that moment, Sarah understood, she had to step beyond the confines of her fears and act. The decision loomed over her. She could feel her very essence standing on the precipice of change. "Okay," she said, her voice gaining strength. "Let us make a plan." Tom grinned, the tension in the room lifting slightly. Together, they began to outline their next steps. But as they scribbled notes and thoughts flew between them, Sarah's mind drifted to something deeper. Her commitment was no longer just about uncovering deceit but also about redefining her own destiny. The steps she was about to take would shape her character indefinitely. As night crept closer, the urgency thickened. They were venturing into a treacherous unknown, and Sarah could feel the stakes surge higher. The knocking shadows loomed outside, but her heart fluttered with newfound clarity, she would confront whatever lay ahead head-on. Just as they finalized their plan, a rush of air swept through the apartment as the door swung open further, seemingly uninvited. A figure hovered in the threshold, a face she had hoped never to see again. The moment hung heavy in the air, and she felt all previous resolve testing its limits. "I've come to warn you," the figure said, and Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The truth was more dangerous than she had imagined, and it was clear this was just the beginning of her deepest trials. What she didn't realize was that the very confrontation she had steeled herself for was arriving sooner than she anticipated, and the ensuing challenge would test the foundations of everything she was beginning to build. Would she crumble under pressure, or would she rise to meet the flame? Sarah's mind raced as she looked at the figure standing in the doorway. Her pulse quickened. It was Tom's brother, Jason, an unexpected ghost from the past. His presence shook her resolve, rattling the newfound courage she had barely managed to cling to moments before. She could see shadows of their shared history lurking in the lines of his face, but there was something more pressing in his demeanor than just nostalgia. "Sarah," he said, stepping further into the dim light of the apartment. "You need to listen to me. What you're planning, it's dangerous. You don't know what you're getting into. Is that why you've come?" She challenged, her voice tinged with defiance. "To discourage me? Because I need to know the truth, Jason. No one is going to stop me." "You think you're brave?" He shot back, his tone laced with a mix of urgency and frustration. "Bravery is not just about diving into the unknown without considering the risks. It's about understanding what's at stake." Each word struck Sarah like a bolt. Memories flooded her mind, fueling both her resentment and her need to prove herself. Yet as Jason's gaze bore into her, an unsettling feeling crept into her stomach. How much did he know? Could he truly comprehend the depths of her determination? "We're not asking for a lecture from you, Jason," Mr. Jenkins interjected, his voice firm and protective. "We need to focus on the mission." "The mission?" Jason retorted, a bitter edge creeping into his voice. "It's not about some noble cause, Sarah. There are people involved who would do anything to silence opposition. You're putting yourselves in the crossfires of a battle you aren't prepared for." "But what if we succeed?" A spark ignited within Sarah. "What if we uncover the truth? That's worth the risk." Jason sighed, running a hand through his hair in exasperation. "And what if you don't? What if you end up regretting this decision? You can't undo what's done. You're not ready for the consequences." Each of his words layered over her sense of certainty, creating doubt that settled deep in her bones. She felt exposed, fighting to maintain the facade of control when inside, shadows of fear were clamoring for attention. Could she face the unknown if it spiraled out of her grasp? Before she could answer, Tom stepped between them, breaking the palpable tension. "Sarah's right, we can't let fear dictate our actions. The truth is more powerful than your voices." Jason opened his mouth as if to protest, but he fell silent, glancing between them. He was weighed down by his protective instincts, but how could she make him understand? This endeavor wasn't just about collecting evidence, it was about forging her own identity beyond the confines of being Tom's sister or Jason's acquaintance. "I have to do this," Sarah said firmly, gathering her courage. "Not just for what it might reveal, but for the person I want to become." There was a stillness in the room, punctuated by the steady thrum of her heartbeat. Jason's eyes softened momentarily, revealing a flicker of understanding. But before that connection could anchor her, the urgency of the night snapped back into focus. The gathering wasn't waiting for their hesitation. "I need to make a choice," Sarah murmured, realizing her decision was more than an immediate risk, it was a defining moment. The clarity washed over her, invigorating her resolve. "No matter the outcome, I'm embarking on this journey. I must confront this situation or risk being shackled by my inaction forever," she concluded, determination rippling through her. With each passing second, the clock ticked closer to the meeting, and she sensed the stakes rising. She turned towards Jason, her expression resolute. "If you want to stop me, you'll have to do it on the outside. I'm going in." The silence thickened, a chasm of understanding beginning to bridge between them. Jason's eyes searched hers, perhaps hoping to see a hint of uncertainty where she stood firm. As the three of them prepared to solidify their departure, an unexpected thought crossed Sarah's mind: the more she took the initiative to shape her own narrative, the more she would learn about herself. But with every revelation came an unsettling truth: the path was fraught with peril. Just as they made their final arrangements, an ominous sound reverberated through the apartment, a low growl from the shadows outside. This wasn't just about catching their adversaries off guard anymore, it was about facing what lurked in the dark corners of their lives. "Sarah," Jason's voice broke through her thoughts, tense and urgent, "you have to be careful. Something tells me tonight is going to change everything." With that, a rush of adrenaline surged through her. This was the moment she had been preparing for, but would she be able to handle the truth, whatever it might reveal? The night was alive with uncertainty, and just as she stepped closer to the threshold of her newfound reality, she felt the chilling embrace of fate closing in around her. What awaited them on the other side of that door was beyond any of their imaginations, but Sarah knew one thing for sure: she would confront whatever came next, even if the shadows harbored unforeseen betrayals. The door creaked open, a reluctant gateway to what loomed beyond. Sarah hesitated for a split second, her heart racing with a cocktail of fear and exhilaration. She could almost hear Jason's voice echoing in her mind, merging with her own determination: understanding the risks was essential. Yet, at that moment, she dove headfirst into the unknown. The night air outside was electric, laden with tension that seemed to pulse in time with her heartbeat. The streetlights flickered ominously, shadows flickering and dancing as if they too were sentient. She could sense Tom and Jason flanking her, their presence both a comfort and a reminder of the weight of their plans. "Are you ready?" Tom murmured beside her, his voice steady but laced with an underlying current of anxiety. Sarah steeled herself, letting her breath out slowly as she recalled her purpose, discovery. Not just of the truth buried inside the chaos of their lives, but of her own strengths and potentials. "I am. Let us do this," she replied, her voice gaining strength. As they moved deeper into the night, she noticed subtle changes in her surroundings. The familiar streets of her neighborhood now felt foreign and menacing. Each footfall became a heartbeat in a rhythm she was yet to understand. The shadows seemed richer, darker, thick with secrets. Deep within her, a conflicting storm brewed. Doubts lurked, whispering venomous doubts about her worth and commitment to the path she'd chosen. Was she equipped to handle whatever revelations awaited them? Deep down, she acknowledged remnants of insecurity, echoes of her past identity that clung stubbornly to her. Pushing those fears aside, she drew on her resolve. Determination had taken root within her like a seed, eager to grow despite the uncertain conditions. This journey wasn't just an escape, it was an evolution, an assertion of who she was and who she wanted to become. As they approached the location they had meticulously scouted, Sarah noticed a commotion ahead. Harsh voices and hurried movements spurred her adrenaline. It was then she realized they were not just participants in the unfolding drama but crucial players in a much larger story. They had a part to play, and the stakes were higher than they had anticipated. Tom gestured subtly for them to take cover behind a nearby vehicle. The rapid back and forth of urgent dialogue reached her ears, and she instinctively leaned closer to catch fragments of the discussion. She could barely make out key phrases: false narrative, control, and silence. Instantaneously, the pieces clicked into place. This was the battle Jason warned her about, tangible and throbbing in the air around them. Her heart quickened not just with fear but with the realization that she was actively engaging in something monumental. But as the men moved around, she spotted something else, a figure on the periphery, observing. An instinct kicked in. This was no coincidence. She felt it in her bones, an irrepressible urge surged through her. Who was this stranger? Why were they standing apart yet vigilant? "Look," she whispered sharply to Tom and Jason, gesturing discreetly. The tension intensified as they turned to focus on the stranger, and she noticed a flicker of something familiar in their features. "Do you see that?" she continued, "That's not just anyone. I think I know them." The thrill of recognition mingled dangerously with her anxiety. Having a personal connection in this volatile environment meant more than just the possibility of gaining insight. It could also jeopardize everything they had planned. "Stay alert," Jason cautioned, diverting her attention back to the immediate. Yet, her thoughts raced in new directions. She had expected to uncover secrets about the world, but here came a potentially revealing truth about her own past and connections. Doubts morphed into resolve once more as she assessed the situation before her. Whatever had led her here was pushing her toward discovery of others and, ultimately, of herself. "We need to approach, we can't let this slip away," she insisted. The conviction ringing true in her voice. As they prepared to confront the enigma looming in the shadows, she felt the brooding uncertainty transform into a clarion call. It wasn't just about the truth anymore, it was about gripping hold of the very essence of her identity. There's no turning back now, Sarah realized, the impetus blazing within her. With a final glance at Tom and Jason, she took a step forward, fortified by an unyielding desire to unveil what had previously remained hidden. The air buzzed with anticipation and danger as she crossed the threshold into a reckoning that would define her. But as she took her first decisive steps toward the stranger, her heart thudded ominously against her ribs. A risky confrontation loomed, with the potential to unearth secrets far beyond her understanding. The night was alive with questions her heart was ready to face, but the answers promised to deliver both enlightenment and peril. "Who are you?" Sarah shouted into the darkness, her voice cutting through the quiet chaos, ready to challenge the enigma that stood before her. The line of her past was about to merge dramatically with her present, with implications she couldn't yet foresee. The night air crackled with intensity, each moment weighing heavily on Sarah as the shadowed figure turned towards her. She saw the recognition mirrored in the stranger's eyes, the same blend of surprise and fear that buzzed within her. Memories she had tried to keep buried now threatened to resurface, as familiar features ignited a lineage of emotions. "Sarah," the figure called, voice steady despite the chaos surrounding them. It was a name that had ties to her past that she thought were safely locked away. Now, it stood as a key, unlocking feelings of nostalgia and anxiety in equal measure. "Who are you?" Sarah demanded, her heart thrumming with adrenaline. The confrontation pulled a deeper part of her, the part that thrived on unearthing truths. The arrival of this person on the scene was no mere coincidence, fate had thrust them together for a reason she was yet to comprehend. "I'm here to help you," the stranger replied, their expression softening momentarily. But doubt crept in. Could she trust this person? Her instinct suggested caution, yet the idea of connection, of something reminiscent of home amidst this emotional whirlwind, tugged at her. Tom shifted beside her, mumbling a reminder to stay focused. The urgency of their mission was not lost on her, the stakes were higher than ever. Every detail now felt magnified: the distant voices of the men discussing manipulation, the suffocating shroud of secrecy, and the figure whose identity challenged her very understanding of herself. What kernel of truth could this stranger offer? What connections or revelations lay beneath the surface of their shared past? She needed to wrestle these thoughts into clarity, to channel them into action. "Why now?" she pressed, her tone demanding but curious. "What do you know about them?" Suddenly, the stranger stepped closer, voice low and urgent. "They're not who they seem. They control information, they've stifled voices for too long. But you're different, Sarah, you have the strength to expose them." The gravity of their words hit her like a wave, empowerment intertwined with responsibility. Here was a chance not only to uncover truths beyond her understanding, but to reclaim her own narrative in a world that had long kept her silent. A whirlwind of emotion surged, and with it came clarity. "I want to understand," she responded, her voice steadier now, shrouded in conviction. The gap between her past and her present began to close, illuminating paths she had been too afraid to explore. The foundational uncertainty she'd confronted minutes earlier evolved into a form of determination. She wasn't just unearthing stories hidden in shadows, she was also laying bare her own identity, rich with history and complexity. "Good," the stranger replied, their eyes sparkling with resolve. "But we need to move. Discussing this out in the open could expose you." As the trio began to turn, urgency gripped Sarah's chest. This wasn't merely about the confrontation with information manipulators, it was also about her own journey of self-assertion and discovery. The slow burn of her previous fears blended seamlessly with burgeoning courage. "Wait," she said suddenly, a chilling realization dawning on her. "If they're watching us, then they might know about you too." The stranger paused, a flicker of fear crossing their face. "We must tread carefully. But you have to lead us, they wouldn't expect you to wield the truth as your weapon. You'll need to own your narrative, to harness that power." The magnitude of their suggestion rang true, echoing through the corridors of her mind. It wasn't enough to merely understand, she had to act, to take control of her destiny, to challenge the hidden forces that had dictated her life for too long. A decision solidified within her as she faced the shadows that now encroached again. "Then let us do this together." She turned to Tom and Jason, their determination mirrored in their expressions. The time had come to confront the unsettling truths weaving through their lives. But as they took strides into the night, she felt the awareness of a lingering threat against her newfound resolve. What if we're walking into a trap? Jason murmured, drawing her back from the edge of certainty. Perhaps, Sarah replied, a grin of defiance creeping across her face. But it's time I faced what's hidden. I'm ready to take the leap. With a final glance at the stranger, a bridge linking her past to her uncertain future, she squared her shoulders, her heart pounding with every footfall toward the impending challenge. Just as she felt the empowerment rush through her veins, a distant sound broke the fragile quiet, a warning she hadn't anticipated. Sirens echoed further down the street, a menacing reminder of the impending confrontation that loomed just out of sight. In that heart-stopping moment, she realized, the greater the risks, the greater the potential for liberation. But would liberation come at a cost she wasn't ready to pay? As they advanced, the specter of consequences flitted just beyond her vision, already signaling the trials awaiting her choice. The sirens sliced through the cool night air, an unfurling wave of anxiety that crashed against Sarah's resolve. Each wailing note seemed to resonate with the heart of her uncertainty. She could feel the tumultuous shift within her, the initial rush of empowerment now mingling with a darker caution. "Let us go," Tom urged, urgency lacing his voice as he pulled for movement. It wasn't just the threat looming behind them, it was within her, the gnawing question of what would happen next. As they ducked into a narrow alley, Sarah's thoughts raced, sparking with possibilities and doubts. This was not simply a skirmish against unseen enemies, it was a deep plunge into her very essence. Could she truly be the voice of change? The idea had once seemed too grand, too dangerous. Yet it now blazed with clarity amidst the chaos. "Focus, Sarah," she reminded herself, bringing her mind back to the task at hand. The stranger's words echoed in her ears, ownership of her narrative was paramount. But as they pressed onward, dark shadows bled with adrenaline-infused fear. "What's the plan?" Jason groaned, wiping sweat from his brow. "You seem pretty sure of yourself, but we can't wing it." She halted for a moment, the urgency of their situation forcing her to confront the rising dread within. The burden of leadership rested heavier than she anticipated. Her friends looked to her, eyes expectant. They were counting on her to navigate through not just the physical maze but the psychological one that twisted deeper into her past. With breath steadying, she realized she could not just look outward for direction. "We need to gather information about them. Where are they holding the meeting? We need to find their weakness." "Right," Tom replied, brow furrowing. "But how do we do that without being noticed?" With instinct guiding them, Sarah pulled out her phone, rattling her fingers over the cracked screen as ideas sparked. "We could engage with the crowd. There are folks who might know something, maybe someone who's seen the meeting place." "I don't know," Jason grumbled, glancing back towards the main street, an unsettling unease sitting heavily. "It feels too risky." "It is risky," she countered, meeting his gaze fiercely. "But what's the alternative? Running blindly from our fears? I want to let them dictate how we move forward. I need you to trust me." Beyond the alley, the noise of the streets roared, people bustling on, unknowing and unaware. In that moment, she felt the fire kindling within, the steep climb toward her true self becoming undeniable. This was not simply about the external fight, it was a fight against a lifetime of hesitance, of being held captive by her own insecurities. Finally steadying herself, Sarah felt an unfamiliar confidence lace her resolve. "Let's split up, I'll head toward the diner on 5th and see if I can gather intel from the patrons. Tom, you and Jason watch the alley entrance. Stay alert." She settled her gaze firmly on her friends, radiating assurance. "I need you to provide backup if things go south." Her words hung momentarily before the group nodded, solidarity shimmering between them. They were stepping away from the shadows, ready to probe into the nest of secrets and fears she had permitted to reign unchallenged. As Sarah moved away from her friends, her pulse quickened with every stride toward the diner's neon light shining like a lighthouse. She felt moments of panic tap against her chest, but she summoned her strength, banishing them with thoughts of the power she could wield from the truth. Yet, as the diner came into sight, the feeling that something was amiss pinched at her gut. Wariness crawled through her like ice water in her veins. What awaited her within those welcoming doors? Just as she reached for the handle, a shiver of realization drew her back. What if they were already 2 steps ahead of her? What if the information she sought wasn't just elusive but entangled with deeper, more dangerous truths? The anticipation of revelation hung heavy, a noose tightening around her throat. There was no going back, she was poised on the precipice of a war within, poised to unearth truths that may unravel more than the adversaries lurking ahead. A single question loomed as she caught her breath, a challenge her heart hesitated to grasp: were the truths worth the price of upheaval? And with that, she stepped through the door, her destiny entwined within the very answers she sought, a magnetic pull toward a fate she could neither evade nor fully embrace. Inside the diner, the familiar jingle of the doorbell felt like a distant melody echoing in Sarah's mind. She was enveloped in the diner's usual warmth, yet the stakes were now elevated, the air crackled with tension. The booths that had cradled her stories of innocence and dreams now served as reminders of the battle she was choosing to fight. She quickly scanned the room, searching for familiar faces in the dim light, but her attention was drawn to a mustached man sitting at the far end of the bar. He was engrossed in conversation with 2 shady figures nearby, their hushed tones indicated something nefarious was brewing. Fear churned in her stomach, but she methodically pushed it aside. The time for hesitation had passed. Now or never, Sarah whispered to herself, her newfound resolve kicking into gear. As she approached a booth filled with raucous laughter, she tapped into her waitress persona, a mask she'd worn for far too long. It was time to blend in, to listen, and gather crucial information. "Can I grab you all anything?" she asked, projecting confidence and a facade of cheerfulness. The laughter stilled, and 4 eyes turned to her. "Not unless you have a side of juicy gossip with those fries," one of the patrons said, smirking. Sarah's pulse quickened, ideas colliding in her mind. "I might know a few things," she said, leaning slightly closer, throwing a casual glance at the men she had seen earlier. "You hear anything about a certain businessman causing troubles for the locals?" The patrons exchanged knowing looks, and Sarah felt the room tilt slightly under the weight of their shared understanding. It was a high-stakes game she was getting involved in, one that tested not just her ingenuity but her very essence. "What are you talking about?" "You know how folks twist stories," one of them scoffed. "Sure, but sometimes those twists carry consequences," she countered, her tone now sharper. The tension in the booth shifted, curiosity blossomed. "You really think you can take him on?" Another patron inquired, surprise flickering across their features. "I'm not just thinking it, I have to act. Or risk losing everything." Her resolve rang clear in her voice, sparking a fire she could feel spreading among the onlookers. With every word, she built her narrative, demonstrating that she was more than just a waitress collecting tips. Pieces began to fall into place as whispers of the businessman's involvement, the threat against Mr. Jenkins, and promises of bravery cascaded through discussions around her. Observing their reactions, she realized that perhaps she could turn the tide in her favor and seize control of the narrative. Everybody loves an underdog story. "Maybe I'm betting my story against his," she ventured, the fear coaxing adrenaline into her veins and awakening her spirit. As conspiracy unfolded in hushed conversations, Sarah seized upon every detail shared among patrons. They spoke in low tones, sharing rumors, naming names, and revealing a network of those who had dared to fight back against looming power. All this was potential fuel for the engine of change. Then she recognized a face from the men's table, the hushed figure one of the shady men. It was Tom's brother's friend, known for dubious dealings with powerful figures. Clarity struck her like lightning. Here was vital information contained within a single meeting where deception lingered. This was her moment to act. "Excuse me," she said smoothly, pivoting towards Tom's brother's associate. I've heard about your connections. You might be able to help bridge the gap for someone in a difficult position. He looked intrigued, raising an eyebrow. And what's in it for me? Truth, she replied, finding her voice steady with purpose. A fair chance to bring down a power that threatens everyone. His interest piqued, but her heart raced at the prospect of revealing everything playing in the backdrop of her life. The lines she had drawn between herself and the fight for justice faded, merging into a single pursuit for freedom. As conversations bubbled around her, she was fortified by their support and emboldened by the raw power flowing through her. She was not just an observer of fate, she was reclaiming control of her narrative. Yet, as the night lengthened and the diner's usual patrons began to disperse, Sarah's thoughts shifted to her friends gathered safely outside, to Mr. Jenkins and the stories he'd shared. Their safety depended on the momentum she could gather here. Firming her resolve, she turned back to the men. I might not have power, but I have the truth, and that can disrupt even the most fortified walls. Let us expose those plans hidden from you. Nods of agreement floated in the air as she felt a spark igniting within her deeper than mere audacity. It was a commitment toward her newfound purpose, an understanding yet unformed that this was her chance and she would seize it. Outside, beyond the walls of the diner, the shadows awaited, but Sarah was ready to illuminate the darkness. The knowledge brimming from her newfound network encompassed hope, empowerment, and a vital strength she had carried silently until now. It was time to arm herself with that knowledge, transforming weaknesses into undeniable force. Just before she stepped out to reunite with Tom and Jason, she cast one last look at the gathering behind her. An undercurrent was alive, coursing through the diner as it silently acknowledged the unfolding revolution. Against the tide of deceit and greed, she was finally defining her legacy. As she exited into the night, determination reflected in her eyes. The air was electric with possibilities, she felt grow and expand beyond what she had ever imagined for herself. She was no longer a simply defined waitress, caught in a mundane existence, she was a fighter, laying claim to her destiny in the face of adversity. Now, she was ready to lead the way forward to forge a future that intertwined her ambitions with those of her allies and ignite a beacon of hope against the shadows threatening to snuff it out. It was time to redefine herself, to reclaim the narrative and shine bright. The battle was just beginning, but she was prepared, armed with truth that could change everything. Her heart surged as she stepped back into the swirling shadows, ready to confront whatever lay ahead, knowing that this fight was not just for Mr. Jenkins' legacy but for her own name written into history. This was the moment of transformation, her moment no longer fading in the background, blindsided by fears, but stepping boldly into the light of truth. Now, it was time to act. And together with her growing coalition, they would rise against the shadows and instigate an undeniable change. As she approached Tom and Jason, there was a newfound glow in her eyes. She was ready to lead their efforts with an unwavering sense of purpose, one she had forged from the lessons of courage, truth, and the battles she had chosen to engage in. With the newfound alliances solidified, she would carry this flame into the heart of darkness, and as she stood side by side with her friends, she felt an unshakable confidence in their collective resolve. In the depths of uncertainty, she had discovered the strength required for transformation. The fight was far from over, but understanding herself fully bought her the keys to unlocking a future ripe with potential. Let us make some noise, she declared, a quiet revolution pulsating at her fingertips, unyielding in purpose and guided by fierce determination. As they set forth, the night had never looked so alive with possibility, and Sarah was resolute. The truth would not just set them free, it would light their way and the lives of those who needed it most. And as she embraced the challenges yet to come, she stood tall, owning her voice amidst the silence, ready to rewrite the narrative forevermore. Now, you need to act. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, your support is what fuels incredible narratives like this. Comment your reactions and theories about this gripping conclusion, because every voice matters. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need this dose of inspiration. Join the movement of personal growth and overcoming obstacles, because only true fans of personal transformation recognize the significance of supporting the channel in this way.